The void beyond the Orion expanse was cold and silent, an endless stretch of black pierced only by distant stars. At the edge of known space, the Galactic Triumvirate survey ship Tethys drifted in near-complete darkness, scanning the void for anomalies. Commander Jara Lannis stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the flickering sensor readouts. It was supposed to be a routine patrol. Then, the silence shattered. A burst of static interrupted the monitors. A signal, faint but unmistakably artificial. The communications officer's hands danced across the console. "Commander, I'm picking up a transmission. It's garbled, but definitely not from any known triumvirate source." Jara's gaze narrowed. "Bring it up. Origin?" "Coordinates off the edge of the expanse, just beyond sensor range." The bridge grew tense. For centuries, this sector was a dead zone, too unstable for colonization or travel. Few dared venture there, and fewer still returned with anything to report. Suddenly their scanners flickered, capturing the outline of a vessel unlike anything in the Imperial Registry. It appeared for only seconds, a sleek silhouette against the stars, blacker than space itself, with a hull that absorbed every scan, like a void wrapped in shadow. No insignia, no transponder. And then it vanished. "Impossible," muttered Jara. "How can something just disappear?" Before anyone could answer, alarms blared. "Commander, a fleet outpost near these coordinates just went dark. No distress calls, no explosion detected. It's like it ceased to exist." A cold dread settled over the bridge. The Tethys sensors caught movement, multiple contacts flaring briefly, then extinguishing as if swallowed by nothingness. Entire ships blinked out, one after another. "Report!" Jara's voice cut through the chaos. "Unknown vessel just reappeared on long range. They're moving toward us at impossible speed." Jara gripped the armrest. "Battle stations, all weapons ready. Don't engage until I give the order." The crew scrambled, hearts pounding as the black shape approached, shrouded in an unnatural silence. Then, without warning, the Tethys systems flickered, lights dimming. Controls failed, communications died. "It's hacking us," the chief engineer gasped. "Systems override, no manual control." The unknown warship did not fire. It did not open its weapons bays or launch missiles. It didn't need to. The Tethys simply went dark, drifting helplessly in the void as its systems surrendered to an unseen force. Moments later, a broadcast crackled over the comm channel, the voice cold, monotone, in a language half-recognizable. "As ancient Terran dialect, you trespassed. Leave this sector. You were warned." And then, the warship disappeared again. The bridge was silent except for ragged breaths. Jara stared at the empty space where the threat had been, heart hammering. She called in the distress beacon, but no response came from other fleets. One by one, ships deployed to investigate vanished like ghosts. Back at the Galactic Triumvirate's capital, the Council's chambers were flooded with reports of the disappearances. Ministers argued, pointing fingers and demanding action, but no one could explain the mystery. Some whispered about ancient weapons from forgotten wars. Others feared it was the return of a long-lost race. But no one had a name for the shadow. Stalking their borders, Fleet Admiral Kylos, a veteran with scars from a dozen campaigns, was summoned. "This warship, it's unlike anything we've ever seen," the Council warned. "You must find it, understand it, destroy it." Kylos nodded grimly, or die trying. As he prepared his fleet, the unknown warship's message echoed in his mind, an ominous warning from the ghosts of a forgotten past. The war had only just begun. Fleet Admiral Kylos sat in the dim light of his private quarters aboard the Command, ship resolute, staring at the star map projected before him. The black void beyond the Orion expanse still held its secrets, and that mysterious warship had vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving behind only questions and terror. The Council's orders were clear: find the ship, understand its origins, and destroy it. But Kylos knew better. There was something deeper at work here, something ancient. He recalled the fragments buried deep within the Imperial archives, the whispered legends of a species long thought extinct. Humans. Millennia ago, they were little more than a footnote, a primitive race that rose too quickly, toppled civilizations, and vanished in a collapse that reshaped the early galaxy. Their technology, chaotic and unpredictable, was considered dangerous, or best forgotten. Yet now the warship's design was eerily familiar. The sleek hull absorbing scans, the silent disablement of entire fleets without a shot fired. These matched descriptions of Terran stealth cruisers found in forbidden texts. Kylo summoned his trusted science officer, Lyra Mendel, a sharp mind, who had spent years studying lost technologies. "We can't ignore the possibility," Lyra said, her voice low with tension. "The patterns, the code, the signatures. It's human. Or something derived from human tech." Kalos clenched his jaw. If humanity still exists, why now? Why attack? Lyra looked down at the datapads, eyes scanning encrypted files from the Sol System archives, once considered the cradle of humanity. Humans were never completely wiped out. Some say they transcended, uploaded their consciousness, fled into higher dimensions. Others believe they evolved beyond physical form. But what if they've been waiting, watching, and now they're back? The idea unsettled the Admiral more than he expected. The Galactic Triumvirate had dominated unchallenged for over 12,000 years. The belief in their supremacy was a pillar of civilization itself. Yet here was evidence that something beyond their control had returned, and that return was not peaceful. "We launch a deep space reconnaissance mission," Kylos decided. "We find their trail and follow it to the source." Lyra nodded. "I'll prepare the encryption decoders and subspace scanners. We'll need everything to get a clean read." Before the Resolute departed, Kalos made one last stop at the ancient memorial on Dirac's grave, the ruins of humanity's failed early colony, now a sacred site for historians and those who respected the echoes of the past. The ruins were silent, blackened by centuries of neglect. But as Kylo stood amidst broken stone monoliths etched with unfamiliar glyphs, he felt a cold presence, as if unseen eyes watched him. "Admiral," his aide called softly. "Our scanners picked up something." Across the sky, a shadow moved. The black warship reappeared, hovering just beyond sensor range. It made no aggressive move, only observing. Kylos's voice was steady, but inside, adrenaline surged. "Open a channel. Attempt communication." Static hissed over the speakers. No response. The ship's hull absorbed every signal, every probe, every attempt at contact. Suddenly, the Resolute systems began to fail one by one, shields flickering, engines stuttering. "Impossible," Lyra shouted. "It's hacking us. They've bypassed all firewalls." The warship did not attack. It didn't need to. The Resolute's computers, navigation, and weapons were disabled without warning. A cold voice echoed through the ship's comm system, in a language half-remembered and broken, ancient Terran dialect. "You trespassed. Leave this sector. You were warned." Then, as suddenly as it came, the voice stopped. The warship dissolved back into the stars. Kalos was left with a crippled flagship and a haunting message. Back aboard the Resolute, Kalos gathered his officers. "This isn't just a threat, it's a declaration. Whatever humans are now, they want the galaxy to know they're here. And they mean business." Lyra frowned. "It's more than business, it's judgment." Kylos's eyes darkened. "Then we better prepare for the reckoning." As the Resolute limped away from Dirac's grave, the void beyond the Orion expanse seemed less empty and far more dangerous. The forgotten ghosts of humanity had returned, not as legends, but as reckoning. Incarnate. The Resolute drifted through the desolate remains of Dirac's grave, its system still flickering like a dying star. Fleet Admiral Kalos stood on the bridge, his gaze fixed on the stars beyond. The black warship's warning echoed in his mind. "You trespassed. Leave this sector, you were warned." But he knew they would not leave. Not when the survival of the Galactic Triumvirate itself was at stake. "Admiral," Lyra Mendels, Voice cut through the tense silence. Our communications arrays are partially restored. We might have a chance to send a message. Kalos nodded. Do it. We need to learn who or what we're dealing with. As the crew scrambled to re-establish contact, a shadow passed over the Resolute. The warship was back. Silent, vast, and unreadable. It hovered just beyond sensor range, unblinking and unyielding. The bridge crew held their breath. No weapons. Fired, no engines flared. The warship simply watched. Suddenly, the Resolute's systems flickered again, this time more violently. Power surged and waned, consoles flashing warnings. The familiar hum of the ship's core stuttered ominously. It's overriding us, the chief engineer warned. They're inside our systems. This isn't just hacking, it's domination. Kalos gritted his teeth. Divert all power to shields and life support. Keep weapons hot but hold fire. The warship's dark hull shimmered as if absorbing every attempt to scan it. Then, without warning, a broadcast crackled through every channel. Distorted, cold, and unmistakably human. The voice was synthetic, emotionless. It spoke in the ancient Terran dialect, translated by Lyra's devices in real time. You trespassed, on forbidden ground. Your empire's sins are written in the stars. This is your final warning. Leave now, or be undone. Silence followed. The crew stared at the empty space where the warship had been moments before. It vanished without a trace. No jump signature, no warp ripple, no debris. Kalos felt a chill. This was no random attack. It was a message, a silent threat from a power far beyond the Triumvirate's understanding. Status report, he demanded. Systems recovering slowly. But we're still vulnerable, the communications officer replied. No signs of the warship anywhere. Kalos's gaze hardened. Prepare to move out. We cannot linger here. We need reinforcements and answers. As the Resolute limped away from the graveyard of humanity's past, Kalos pondered the implications. The humans, once thought extinct, had returned not as desperate survivors but as masters of a new, terrifying power. He knew the Triumvirate's arrogance had been shattered. No longer were they the undisputed rulers of the galaxy. Something ancient and unknowable had come to judge them. The Council would demand retaliation. The fleets would be mobilized. But Kalos feared that conventional warfare would be useless against a foe that wielded technology beyond comprehension. He turned to Lyra. Find out everything you can about the Terran archives. Their history, their technology, anything that might give us a clue. Lyra nodded, already accessing the ship's vast databases. There's something buried deep within the old files. Accounts of a singularity event that wiped out humanity's physical form. But scattered data suggests some survived, uploading their minds into machines transcending reality itself. Kalos clenched his fists. Then these aren't just ghosts. They're something else. Something evolved. The warship's warning echoed again in his mind. It was not just a threat. It was a promise. Suddenly, a warning light blared. The Resolute's sensors detected a massive energy surge nearby, just beyond the horizon of known space. Anomaly detected, Lyra announced, voice tense. Energy readings off the charts. Could be another ship, or a weapon. Kalos stared at the screen. The unknown warship was no longer a fleeting shadow. It was becoming an unstoppable force. We're not just facing an enemy, he said grimly. We're facing judgment. As the Resolute prepared to follow the new lead, Kalos knew one thing with certainty. The war had only just begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The capital world of the Galactic Triumvirate buzzed with a mixture of disbelief and rising panic. News of the unknown warship's devastating strike had shattered centuries of imperial confidence. Entire fleets, some numbering in the thousands of vessels, had vanished, obliterated without a single volley of gunfire. Now the Council's most desperate hope rested on the 7th Imperial Armada, the largest and most advanced fleet ever assembled, tasked with one impossible mission: sail to the coordinates of the legendary Sol system and reclaim the lost birthplace of humanity. Fleet Admiral Kalos stood on the bridge of the flagship Invictus, watching the stars streak by as the Armada entered deep space. He felt the weight of history pressing down on him. This was more than a military campaign. It was the Triumvirate's final stand. "Sir," the communications officer reported, voice trembling. "We're approaching the Sol system coordinates. Scans coming online now." Kalos turned to the expansive view screen. Where once a blue and green jewel had spun beneath alien skies, nothing remained. "No planet," muttered Kalos. "Just empty space." But the emptiness was deceptive. A massive structure floated in orbit, eclipsing the stars. A fortress, larger than any moon, its surface black as the void, etched with angular patterns that seemed to shimmer and shift. "Unknown warship," Lyra breathed beside him. "The Arkoth class, its size. It's more than a ship, it's a mobile fortress." Suddenly, sensors flared. The entire Armada's systems began to fail simultaneously. Power grids flickering, navigation computers glitching, shields dimming. "Electronic warfare," the chief engineer announced grimly. "It's a blackout field, we're dead in the water." Panic spread through the command decks. The Invictus tried to respond, but their weapons were offline, frozen in place. The colossal warship emitted a pulse of blinding energy, a silent wave that washed across the Armada. In an instant, every ship's systems shut down, weapons and engines silent. On every bridge across the Armada, crew members froze. Life support dropped sharply, alarms screamed, and then nothing. Silence. The Triumvirate's mightiest fleet had ceased to exist, crushed in moments. Back on the Invictus, Kalos's vision blurred. He struggled to maintain consciousness as his neural implants fought the shutdown cascade. When he awoke, the warship was gone. The stars returned, the systems flickered back to life, but the Armada was no more. A voice cut through the silence. Mechanical, cold, unmistakably human. "You claim dominion over the galaxy, but your empire is built on the bones of millions. We have come not to conquer, but to judge. Leave Sol's sector, or be erased." Kalos's hands clenched the armrests. He had stared death in the face and lived. But he understood now. This warship was not just a weapon. It was a reckoning. Word of the annihilation spread like wildfire. The Council's facade cracked under pressure as systems across the Triumvirate questioned their leaders. Rebellions ignited in border worlds. The once unbreakable grip of the Empire began to slip. In secret, Kalos met with Council representatives, urging caution and diplomacy. "We cannot fight a ghost," he warned. "Our fleets are obsolete against this enemy. We must learn what they want before we're all destroyed." But the Council was divided. Some demanded all-out war. Others whispered of surrender. Fear was now a contagion. Outside the halls of power, rumors of the returning humans grew. Some hailed them as gods returning to punish the wicked. Others cursed them as demons come to end an age. Amid the chaos, Kalos stood firm. He knew that surviving this warship, this Arkoth-class behemoth, would require more than weapons and fleets. It would demand understanding the legacy of humanity itself. He returned to the archives, poring over ancient texts, desperate to find answers buried beneath layers of time and secrecy. The warship was no mere machine. It was the physical embodiment of a people evolved beyond flesh and blood, wielding technology that bent reality. And as the Triumvirate's empire teetered on the brink of collapse, one truth was clear. The age of human supremacy was over, and the galaxy was about to be reborn from the ashes. The galaxy's communication networks exploded simultaneously. Across every star system, every ship, every colony, a singular message echoed. Calm, unyielding, impossible to ignore. Fleet Admiral Kalos was aboard the crippled flagship Invictus, deep within a hidden command bunker beneath the surface of Nova Prime, the Triumvirate's former capital. The voice came through the ship's comm system, clear and commanding. "I am the custodian." The voice was synthetic yet human. It resonated with authority beyond mere machines, as if centuries of knowledge and judgment were compressed into a single presence. Kalos gathered his officers in the war room, all eyes fixed on the holographic projection that shimmered to life in the center of the chamber. The figure was humanoid but translucent, composed of shifting light and data streams, a living avatar of artificial intelligence. Its eyes, deep and glowing, seemed to pierce through time itself. For millennia, humanity transcended its flesh to become custodians of peace and balance. We watched as your empires rose on conquest and bloodshed. We observed your wars, your greed, and your cruelty. We warned you. We gave you time to change. The custodian's words were neither a plea nor a threat. They were a decree. Your empires have failed this galaxy. Your arrogance has brought destruction upon yourselves and others. Therefore, judgment has been passed. A holographic star map appeared, dotted with countless red markers, worlds, fleets, and outposts consumed by the custodian's warship, the A. Haturnum. We do not seek to conquer. We seek to restore balance. The weapons you wield will be dismantled. The systems you control will be freed. Slavery, war, and oppression will end. Kalos's jaw tightened. They intend to dismantle the triumvirate? Lyra, standing beside him, nodded grimly. It's not a negotiation. It's an ultimatum. The custodian continued. Resistance is futile. Your fleets, your weapons, your systems will be neutralized. Those who submit will be spared. Those who resist will be erased. The message repeated across countless frequencies, reaching every corner of the galaxy. Panic erupted. On the streets of Nova Prime, citizens watched the broadcast in stunned silence. Some fell to their knees, overwhelmed by fear or hope. Others rioted, desperate to cling to the last vestiges of power. In the war room, Kalos leaned forward, voice low but resolute. We're facing something beyond war. This is judgment, not just of our fleets, but of our civilization. Lyra's fingers flew over the data console. Their technology is unlike anything we've seen. They disable entire fleets without firing a shot. They control energy and information on a scale that defies physics. Kalos's mind raced. Then we don't fight them with weapons. We fight them with knowledge. He turned to his officers. Gather every record of humanity's history, every fragment of Terran tech. We need to understand the custodians if we want to survive. Suddenly, the holo flickered, and the custodian's image shifted, becoming more defined, more urgent. We offer one final chance. Lay down your arms. Accept the new order. Become custodians of peace alongside us. Defiance will bring annihilation. The broadcast ended. Silence filled the room. Kalos looked around at his officers, faces marked by exhaustion, fear, and determination. We have a choice, he said quietly. We can fight a losing battle against an enemy that cannot be defeated, or we can seek a new path. A path where we learn from the past and build a future worth surviving for. Outside, the city trembled. The triumvirate's empire was unraveling, its foundation shaken by an enemy no one had seen coming. But within that chaos, a fragile hope stirred. A chance to rise not through conquest, but through understanding. The galaxy stood at a crossroads. The custodians had passed judgment. Now the survivors would decide what came next. The halls of the Galactic Triumvirate's capital had never felt so empty, or so charged with fear. The once mighty seat of power was now a city shadowed by dread and uncertainty. Outside, massive protests roared as citizens demanded answers. Inside, the council fractured under the custodian's ultimatum. Fleet Admiral Kylos paced in his quarters aboard the Invictus, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. The custodian's message echoed relentlessly in his mind. Lay down your arms. Defiance will bring annihilation. But how could he convince an empire born of war to surrender? A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Lyra Mendel stepped in, carrying a data tablet. We've decrypted new files from the Sol archives, she said, her voice tight with exhaustion. Fragments of Terran history before the collapse. It paints a picture far different from what the Triumvirate taught us. Kalos gestured for her to continue. The Terrans were not just conquerors, they were innovators, philosophers, builders of civilizations. Their downfall wasn't a sudden catastrophe. It was the result of internal collapse, division, and a refusal to adapt. He rubbed his temples. History repeating itself. Lyra nodded. And the custodians, if they are the evolved remnants of humanity, aren't just judges. They're guardians of what's left. They want to prevent us from making the same mistakes. Kylos sighed. But the Council won't listen. They're calling for mobilization, more fleets, more war. Then we have a problem, Lyra said quietly. Before Kylos could respond, the comms buzzed urgently. His second-in-command, Captain Harrell, appeared on the holoscreen, face pale. Admiral, we have reports of a coup attempt. Some high-ranking officers refuse to accept the custodians' demands. They believe we can still win this war with force. Kylos's heart sank. How widespread? Several key fleet commanders and political figures. They're rallying forces on Nova Prime and neighboring systems. Kylos ran a hand through his hair. Then the triumvirate is tearing itself apart. From the inside, Lyra's eyes darkened. If civil war breaks out, we'll be easy prey. The custodians will finish us. Kylos clenched his fists. We need to act fast. We must unite those willing to listen, build a coalition to negotiate or at least survive. He stood abruptly. Prepare a broadcast. I'm addressing the entire Empire. The Invictus's main hall filled with thousands of officers, politicians, and civilians tuned in across the system. Kylos's voice was steady but filled with urgency. Citizens of the Galactic Triumvirate, he began. We face an enemy unlike any before. The custodians are not conquerors, they are judges. Their message is clear. Lay down your arms, or be destroyed. He paused, scanning the sea of faces. This empire was built on strength. Yes, but strength alone is not enough. We must adapt. We must understand what we have become and choose a new path before it's too late. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some nodded, others scowled. We can fight a losing battle and perish like our ancestors before us. Or we can survive by learning and evolving. This is not surrender. It is survival. The broadcast ended, but the ripple of Kylos's words spread far beyond the hall. Moments later, an explosion rocked the Invictus. The coup faction had struck. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring. Sabotage! Lyra shouted, racing to her console. They're trying to seize control. Kylos drew his sidearm and ran toward the bridge, rallying loyal crew members. Chaos erupted as factions clashed, gunfire echoing through the ship's corridors. Kylos fought his way through, determined to keep the Invictus from falling into hostile hands. Finally, he reached the bridge, where Captain Harrell and loyal officers were holding the line. We won't let them destroy us from within. Harrell growled. Kylos nodded. Then we stand together, or we fall divided. Outside the ship, the galaxy waited, its fate uncertain. The unknown warship, the custodian's envoy, loomed somewhere beyond the stars. Its judgment was inevitable. But within the shattered empire, another war raged. A war for unity, for hope, for the very soul of a civilization. Kylos knew the coming days would decide everything. The triumvirate could not withstand enemies from without and within. In the darkness, a new dawn struggled to rise. The Invictus limped through the outer rim of the former triumvirate's territory, its hull scarred by internal conflict and the custodians' relentless assault. Inside, Fleet Admiral Kylos stood before a war council, flanked by Lyra and Captain Harrell. The fractured remnants of the Empire's loyalists gathered, war-weary commanders, scientists, and diplomats alike, each bearing the weight of a dying regime. We have one chance, Kylos said, voice steady but grave. The custodians' forces are unmatched in firepower and technology. We cannot defeat them in open battle. Our only hope lies in the Sol System's archives. Lyra nodded, bringing up a holographic display. There's a hidden facility buried beneath the ruins of old Earth, a data vault containing ancient Terran technologies and possibly the key to disrupting the custodians' control systems. The council exchanged uncertain glances. Many feared it was a fool's errand, a desperate gamble on a forgotten past, but it's all we have, Kalos pressed. If we don't try, the triumvirate dies here. Captain Harrell stood. We'll need a strike team to infiltrate the vault. Small, fast, and equipped with whatever defenses we can muster. Kylos agreed. I volunteer. No, Lyra said, firmly. You're the heart of this resistance. If you fall, all is lost. Reluctantly, Kalos consented. The strike team assembled. Elite soldiers, engineers, and Lyra herself, whose knowledge of Terran tech was invaluable. Their ship, the Phoenix, slipped through enemy lines, cloaked in the shadows of the dying empire. As they approached the Sol, ruins, tension gripped the crew. The black warship Eternum loomed silently nearby, a monstrous sentinel guarding the forgotten cradle of humanity. Stealth is our only ally, Lyra whispered. One misstep, and we're dead. They landed. In the ruins, twisted metal and shattered monuments under a dim, cold sun. The vault entrance was buried beneath layers of sediment and debris, but Lyra's scanning equipment pinpointed its location. Inside, the air was stale, machines humming faintly in the darkness. The team moved cautiously, alert for traps or custodian drones. At the core, they found the vault, a massive data core glowing faintly with Terran symbols. Lyra's fingers flew over ancient consoles, decrypting centuries-old protocols. Suddenly, alarms blared. The custodian's defense systems had detected them. Get ready, Kylos shouted. The team braced as mechanical guardians emerged. Machines, of living metal and light, relentless and merciless. The battle was brutal. Soldiers fell, but they fought with desperate determination. Lyra worked furiously to extract the data, her eyes fixed on the progress bar creeping forward. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, with a triumphant beep, the download completed. Got it, Lyra exclaimed. This is the key, a disruption algorithm designed to destabilize the custodian's control network. As they prepared to leave, the warship Eternum activated its engines, a dark shadow looming over the ruins. They know we're here, Captain Harrell said grimly. The Phoenix launched amidst a barrage of energy fire. Engines screamed as they dodged devastating blasts, but the custodian's forces pursued relentlessly. Inside the ship, Lyra uploaded the disruption code into their systems. Launching now, she said. The ship shuddered as the code sent ripples through the custodian's network. Outside, the warship faltered, its shields flickering, systems glitching. For the first time, the custodian's might wavered. Kylos gripped the console. Hold on. We're not done yet. The Phoenix slipped through the breach and sped toward the waiting fleet of loyalists. The disruption gave them a fighting chance. Back aboard the Invictus, the remnants of the Triumvirate's forces rallied. We have a window, Kalos announced. Strike now, and we reclaim our future. As the fleet surged forward, the galaxy held its breath. The ancient ghosts of humanity had returned to judge the Empire, but in the heart of the Triumvirate, a new hope flickered, born from history, sacrifice, and the unyielding will to survive. The final battle was upon them. The void outside the Invictus crackled with tension. The battered remnants of the Triumvirate's loyalist fleet surged forward, engines blazing with desperate hope. Against all odds, the disruption code Lyra had recovered from the ancient Sol vault rippled through the custodian's network, sending shockwaves that fractured the seemingly invincible warship's control systems. Fleet Admiral Kalos stood on the bridge, every sense razor-sharp. The colossal warship Eternum lurked beyond sensor range, its shadow cast like a death sentence over the Loyalists. But now, for the first time, the Eternum faltered. Shields fluctuating, the tactical officer shouted. Their weapons are misfiring, systems in disarray. Kalos allowed himself a brief flicker of hope. All ships, push forward. Focus fire on the Eternum. We have a chance to break their hold. The fleet roared forward, energy beams cutting through the dark expanse. Explosions blossomed on the warship's hull as shots found their marks. Inside the Eternum, chaos erupted. The custodian's avatar flickered, its composed voice fracturing into fragmented bursts. System integrity compromised. Initiating emergency protocols. Lyra's disruption code had penetrated deeper than anticipated, unraveling centuries of the custodian's control algorithms. But the warship was not done. Its engines ignited in a blinding burst, sending shockwaves through space. A massive pulse radiated outward, a final, devastating act of defiance. Kalos felt the ship tremble violently. The Invictus shook, systems warning of overload. Brace for impact, he ordered, gripping the console. The pulse struck, tearing through the Loyalist fleet. Ships exploded in cascades of fire, some crushed under invisible forces. The void was torn open with a deafening roar. When the shockwave passed, silence followed. Silence filled with the scent of loss. Kalos looked out into space. The Eternum was crippled but still drifting, its vast hull scarred but intact. "Status," he demanded. "Critical damage to enemy systems," the tactical officer confirmed. "They're vulnerable. If we strike now, we can finish it." Kalos met Lyra's eyes. "Are we ready?" Lyra nodded, hands steady. "The disruption is holding. This is our moment." The fleet regrouped for the final strike. Lasers and missiles converged on the warship, breaching its core defenses. Within, the custodian's avatar flickered, fragmented and fading. Judgment, incomplete. Evolution, ongoing. Then, with a blinding flash, the Eternum erupted in a supernova of light, debris scattering into the darkness. Cheers erupted throughout the fleet. The invincible enemy was no more. But the victory was bittersweet. Kalos knew the galaxy would never be the same. The Triumvirate's empire lay in ruins, fractured by war, fear, and its own hubris. Yet amid the ashes, hope glimmered. The custodian's warning had been harsh, but clear. Survival required change. Kalos addressed the fleet, voice steady and resolute. "We have been judged, and we have survived. But survival is not enough. We must rebuild, not as conquerors, but as guardians. We owe this galaxy peace, justice, and respect." Lyra added, "The knowledge we recovered offers a path forward. We can learn from the past and build a future where humanity and all species thrive." The fleet rallied behind them, a new coalition born from defeat and understanding. In the silent stars beyond, the echoes of humanity's past whispered, a warning and a promise. The unknown warship had come and gone, but its legacy endured. A new age dawned, an age of humility, cooperation, and hope. Fleet Admiral Kalos looked out into the vast galaxy, knowing their journey was only beginning. There, war was over. The future was theirs to forge.